Kristen Wright of Open Doors USA joins us now from Erbil, northern Iraq, where she's been visiting Christian refugees who have fled the Islamic State's jihadist army. Kristen, you just visited a refugee camp there. Tell us what you saw.
Well, I would say that I've felt very moved today by the plight of Christians who have had to flee ISIS over the course of the past several months. And earlier today, I spoke with an elderly woman whose husband had been left behind in Kirkush, and he was not able to flee with the rest of the family. And we listened to this woman's story. She was breaking down into tears as she was telling us that they don't know where he is right now, and she hasn't been able to reach him by phone. So just some really heartbreaking stories. As I walked through the camp earlier, I spoke with a number of children that are attending schools that are sponsored by our partners in the region and by many other great organizations. And just thinking through the challenges that these children are facing who have fled. Many of the children and the families had to flee ISIS in the middle of the night with nothing, and they weren't able to bring anything of their lives with them into their new home. And so we spoke with a lot of children that have actually experienced some trauma as a result of what they've been through. The challenges over the past since August, when a lot of families had to flee, the challenges have changed over time. And so something that we were noticing today is that while initially there were tents that were set up for refugees, this was a very temporary solution. And so now we see where there are actually more sturdy housing set up for refugees. There's sort of very small shelters, around 6 by 4 meter shelters that Christian families are taking shelter in. That also have their own challenges, but you see a lot of those all over the place in Erbil, and it's simply because many Christian families are realizing that they're not going home anytime soon, and they're having to make more permanent arrangements to stay on for longer. And as one family told us, that's a very painful thought.
Well, I know when we were there in the summer, the challenges were water and staying cool, that type of thing, and immediate needs of food and clothing, shelter at that time. And then when we went back at Christmas time, we saw there were a whole different set of needs as winter was setting in. Then they needed heaters, but they still needed food. Yes. And as you say, some were in these temporary, more permanent shelters, I guess, but they're very small. What are the needs now that winter has passed?
And that is a great question, and you've definitely watched the transition transpire over the past several months. Right now, many of the NGOs that I'm speaking with and the humanitarian aid workers are telling me that a lot of the challenges have shifted to more long-term considerations, such as education. In fact, one NGO worker told me earlier that their entire focus is now on education because they're realizing that if they're not careful, these kids are going to lose crucial years of their life in terms of their education. And so there are challenges with regard to where many of the Christian refugees have fled from. Cities like Mosul or like Kirkush, the education system is completely different than it is in Erbil. So that creates an entirely different challenge. These children can't just slip into classrooms here in Erbil. They actually, need other arrangements. And so many NGOs are sponsoring schools, and they're finding ways to help these children. But oftentimes it's a temporary measure because everyone was hoping for a long time that this would not be a long-term problem. They're clearly realizing they're going to be here for a while. So a lot of these challenges have shifted to more addressing long-term issues as opposed to those very temporary, quickly, we need to get shelter, we need to get food. All of that is still happening. I was watching food distribution earlier of baskets of food that our partners are distributing. So it's all of those needs still exist, but they're having to also think long-term.
Is the government allowing Christians to set up schools?
Yes, there are a number of schools set up in this region that are doing phenomenal work in terms of helping children and equipping them. Earlier today, I spent some time with a refugee family with just a wonderful, beautiful 16-year-old girl who was at the top of her class in Kirkush before the family had to flee. So now she's here. She's enrolled in a Christian refugee school, and she's also still in the top of her class. And she was telling me earlier that she dreams of being a doctor, and she's really excited for the future when that time can come. I did ask if she sees her future here, and she said no. She misses her home, and she hopes that someday they can go back.
Now, you've talked about the schools. What other kinds of assistance is Open Doors involved in?
Well, Open Doors and our partners on the ground specifically, and many different organizations are working in a variety of areas. So education is very crucial, obviously, but you're also looking at the reality of what a lot of children have experienced, and that is trauma. So trauma counseling is huge. Trauma counseling is something that we're working with adults and with children, and that's really a crucial aspect right now. Some time has passed since people initially fled their homes, and a lot of people need that emotional and spiritual support after what they've been through. So trauma counseling is significant, education is significant, and then also there's something that the concept of child-friendly spaces, and these are designated, supervised areas where refugee children can go to simply be children, and to begin that process of moving on past what they've experienced and past a lot of the pain, and be able to just play with other children, make friends, eat snacks. So we've been able to visit some of those spaces, and I'm really, really excited about the potential of child-friendly spaces throughout Iraq to really help children reclaim childhood in a really crucial way.
Well, it sounds like a lot of the Open Doors emphasis then is looking towards the future. Knowing that there's a whole generation that could rise up being uneducated, traumatized, and just needing to have some fun. What else can the international community do to help them?
Well, I think there are many ways that people can take action. And at Open Doors, we really encourage just a menu of options, actually. The first, with many of the refugee families that I speak to, do ask for our prayers. And one man told me earlier that he said, we can feel your prayers. And he said that he knows that Christians around the world are praying for him. And that's a source of tremendous encouragement for him and his family. So I would say that the first thing that Christians can do is pray for their fellow believers in Iraq, and for people that have had to suffer so much. Second, you can always work to support persecuted Christians, and the projects in Iraq particularly still require a lot of support. We're still in a situation where people have had to leave everything behind and still have nothing, and they've been living with practically nothing for months. So there are a lot of really deep needs. So there are ways that you can support Open Doors in their work with persecuted Christians. You can visit opendoorsusa.org to learn more. And then in my particular capacity, I work as director of advocacy. And so I work with connecting people with advocacy campaigns and ways in which they can speak out to government officials about their persecuted brothers and sisters. And so I would really encourage people to take a look at the advocacy options and advocacy campaigns on opendoorsusa.org. You can write a letter to a persecuted Christian. You can sign a petition on their behalf. You can contact your member of Congress and let them know what your experience is with the persecuted church and how you'd like to encourage them to take action. So there are a variety of options, but it starts with awareness. It starts with understanding what Christians in Iraq are enduring and what they're suffering, and being willing to take that first step of sharing that information with friends and family, and then going beyond that to advocate, to pray, and to support.
Okay, Kristen Wright, we're so appreciative of the work you're doing and raising awareness. Of course, we appreciate Open Doors. Thanks so much for joining us from Erbil, Iraq.
Thank you so much.